80% of businesses in Australia fail in the first year because there is no mandatory education. The barrier to entry is so low.
Could these people figure it out on their own? They probably could, right? However, it's going to take them a lot of trial and error and a lot of time, right? So, 3, 5, 7 years.
Set basic parameters that nobody knows about. It's almost like the pressure becomes too much that they finally reach out. Smart ones do it early. Projections don't pay bills, just like ego doesn't pay bills.
Understand the concept of business, and because if you don't, then there's a good chance you're going to struggle, and that's for anyone.
The biggest piece of advice I'd give to anyone starting out in business is start to document your processes early on and become at least systematic.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Trainer HQ podcast. And today, I've got a very special guest, someone that I go back in the fitness industry a very long time with, well, both personally and also in the fitness industry. And this guy's a dealer.
I thought you trained naturals, Brad.
He is an equipment supplier. His business, Fit Into Shape, is the name of it, and his name's Glen Taylor. Welcome, Glen.
Mate, thank you. Welcome. I don't know if I've ever been introduced as a dealer, but I also don't do that many podcasts where I'm sitting on this side of the microphone. So thanks for having me.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure, and as I alluded to, mate, we go way back. So, I want to say like it was early 2000s, wasn't it, when we crossed paths?
We did,
and we were out on the half Ironman triathlon course, weren't we?
Mate, we were about to jump into the dirty waters and go trample some other fellow Clydesdales. So,
and for anyone who's unaware of that triathlon scene, you got the heavyweight, so you got the over 90 kilos, and then you got the over 100 kilos, which are the big boppers. That was us, wasn't it, mate?
Mate, we were the creme de la creme of big blokes when it came to that sport. So
it was we weren't built for triathlon, and we used to say that, didn't we? Because it'd be all of us, all of us standing there at the start line of the swim, and we'd be like, "Fuck, we're not built for this shit, are we?"
Absolutely not. I've not been built for many of the things that I've tried to do, but you power through, you muscle through. So
and not only on the triathlon scene. So a half Ironman, it's a decent day at the office. It's a 5 or 6 hour day, isn't it? So
that was that early kids or pre-kids part of your life where you had that amount of timing.
That's right.
To get out and train. And not so much nowadays.
Next thing, we ran into each other a few years ago on the mountain bike trails, of course, because we're both keen mountain bikers.
The evolution of gentlemen, we'll call it.
It's the new golfing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's much better than golfing. My only handicap in golfing is myself, so I'd rather get out on the mountain bike for sure.
I do good on the pints at the end of golf, that's for sure. That's about as good as I am.
If drinking were a sport.
Yes. Now, we've been out to, if anyone knows, at Queensland, Hidden Vale, a very famous place for mountain biking, and plenty of trails there. And we've both done the 100-kilometre race out there. But, mate, you did a few more times than me. How many times did you do the 100K mountain bike race out there?
I think I did 3, but that was before it started at Hidden Vale. That was when it was up at the point in Toowoomba, and it was a lot more downhill then to make the 100K. So I do the downhill pretty well. It's the flat and up that the mountain part of up and flat that makes it a little more challenging for myself. It's
impressive, isn't it? It's a long day at the office. I enrolled in one. I can't remember if we were at the same one, but I signed up all guns blazing in the 100-kilometre one. Got out there, started riding. I remember getting to about 30 kilometres, and this is in the new trail. And I remember going, I'm starting to seize up at 30 Ks. And I remember going, fuck, my triceps, like my body, my lower back, everything was locking up. I go, fuck, I've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
I got to 50K, the halfway mark, and I got it off the bike to sort of, try and stretch. I couldn't even straighten my body. And I was like, I think I'm done. And that was it. And that was 4 hours at that point in time. I thought, fuck, this is going to be, I finished up halfway. And if I didn't, it would have been an 8, 9 hour, 10 hour day maybe.
Yeah, look, one of the guys I used to train with, he used to have on the shorts and the nicks that we wore, and it was ambitions versus capabilities. And many times my capabilities have been far, far less than what my ambitions were. So, the mountain bike certainly has been one of those places. So
that's cool. So let's step into the fitness industry and let's map your journey. So first of all, can you just explain to everybody, like those of you who aren't aware of what Fit Into Shape does, what do you do right now? Who do you supply, and what sort of things do you offer?
Yeah, I suppose to sum that up, I've had sort of 23 years of selling fitness equipment in the industry, and Fit Into Shape was originally my PT name, and it just sort of stuck. It wasn't a name that I thought as a personal trainer that was ever going to be anything. It was only a part-time PT thing, but as it's kind of gone along, it's been relatively appropriate as an equipment supplier. Relatively recently in the industry, we've kind of gone from just doing Talk Fitness, which is one of the brands. We now carry 7 brands, and we're a full portfolio of products. And really what we're looking to do is offer a full portfolio of products to particular customers who need it. We focus heavily on making sure that we provide the right equipment mix in the facility, as opposed to just jamming in as much equipment as can fit into a facility. You know, we like to design the space as well, and we really want to work with although it's a little cliche, I do call the people that we work with partners. So many other people do say that, but they're really just equipment suppliers, just jamming equipment in.
Yeah.
For us, we really want to work with the customers that we deal with. We want to help them with their business, whether that be through referrals to other businesses, like yourself, marketing businesses, or other businesses that are affiliates of ours that can help them on their journey to succeed. And part of that is through good equipment supply, good recommendations, and a great network. So I think that name Fit Into Shape is meant to be kind of all-encompassing. So we're an equipment distributor who wants to work with our customers to ensure that they're going to succeed long-term and continue to be repeat customers with us. So
love it. That's great. I guess what I'm hearing also is very bespoke in terms of the type of selection of equipment that you've got as well, because you've got some quite unique stuff. So if we just talk about Torque as an example, there's a lot of people that might not be very clear on Torque and what is on offer there, but probably one of the main things is the tank sled. So and I'm assuming hopefully people have seen or used one of those. So do you want to just double down on some of those things so people can get clarity around that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, if it was anything that we were known for, the tank has become quite ubiquitous. It was fairly well recognized and grew more and more in stature when it became a participant, or the product became a part of the participants in the CrossFit Games in the 2021-2022 season.
I remember that. Yeah.
That sort of really helped to lift the profile of the product, but it's just a great product. Torque has a lot of great functional training products, and the tank is certainly one of them. We're not carrying brands that are totally mainstream, and part of our business structure is we want to have the right equipment for the right partners. So coming up with some specialist pieces, out of the Torque range, and bench fitness is a relatively new, heavy duty bodybuilding type product that we love specializing in that sector of the market now. So each of the brands that we carry are for different reasons or different purposes. The Alina Reformers are a fantastic product in that Pilates space. So we've hand selected products that we think are going to, enhance operators' position. And obviously what we're trying to now do is bring a bit more awareness to our brand, Fit Into Shape, so that people, it becomes a bit of a household name within the fitness industry sector. But also the brands that we work with, we want to promote them and grow them and make sure that, we represent those brands well and help them grow on their journey to represent across the fitness industry. And I guess I'm curious to know, if someone was to set up a commercial gym, then I guess back in the day, my understanding was that they just go with like one supplier, and they would cross fingers that one supplier could supply everything. But now, am I understanding correctly that it's where they might go, okay, we might get a bunch of like equipment from one supplier, then we might come to yourself and get some more bespoke stuff? Is that how it might work? Yeah, look, definitely. I think the industry has evolved a lot. And, back much earlier in my career, the penetration rates in the fitness industry in Australia were somewhere around 8% around the early 2000s. right now we sort of have a penetration rate of anywhere between 18 to 20% of people who participate or have a gym membership. But what that's meant is our industry's become far more diverse. And back when I sort of first started, there was, Good Life only were just sort of kicking off, and they became sort of the biggest chain, and have gone on to become, a lot of venture capital has gone into the business, and
yes,
they own multiple brands. Back then, there really wasn't many franchises. That was mostly independents and ma and pa operators, and they, for simplicity's sake, would tend to buy from one operator.
Yep.
What you've also had in the background is companies like Matrix, who, Matrix or Johnson Health Tech, the parent company, were a manufacturer that started in the early 1970s as an OEM manufacturer, and they made the first Repco bikes for Repco and sold them. They're now, I believe, $1.8 billion publicly listed company, on the Taiwanese stock exchange. They're, a huge company, and they went from having just cardio when they first initially launched the Matrix commercial brand in 2002 to now at 2025 doing, exceptional numbers in strength, cardio, pin loaded, plate loaded. So I'm trying to get around this in a long-winded fashion, but the reality is the industry has changed so much. And what we've seen is some of the major manufacturers probably represent 80% of the market in Australia, and that's in Matrix, Technogym, Life Fitness, and to a degree Core Health and Pre-Core through NovoFit.
Yeah.
What we've also seen is companies like Life Fitness and Hammer Strength. Hammer Strength has been, ubiquitous. It's been around for a long time, but we've seen the rise of strength equipment, and other manufacturers like Gym80 have sort of come in and created this additional awareness of different niches and markets in our industry. And what that has created is some great niches for product to sit outside of just the mainstream manufacturers and people who specialize in these areas, and obviously a business demand for those things. So I hope that gives a bit of context to the question that you're asking, but there is a lot of niche capability or the ability to do full fit outs, and we can cater to both with the ranges that we carry.
Yeah,
it's why we have multiple ranges. But we're also happy in some of the bigger brands that we work with, we'll only provide a product like Torque or Bench or Alina. We won't do necessarily the full fit out. We'll maybe just be a niche provider to those bigger chains.
That makes sense. And in that time, I think about my experience of lifting weights now for 40 years, and I think back to when I first started a gym, a bit under 40 years ago. I think I trained at home for a bit and got my first weight set, and then progressed onto a gym. I mean, the equipment is archaic, and it remained archaic for many years, in my opinion. And one thing I've noticed, because I travel around a lot as you do, I get to visit lots of different gyms and drop into places. And what I've noticed is that the biomechanics, the range of motion, all that sort of stuff is dramatically improved, and it's evolved, and it's moving at a great exponential level, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree largely with your sort of statement on that. And there is also a counter to that a lot of the mainstream manufacturers are working for the funds that they have. So they're trying to reduce the cost of manufacturing. It's not necessarily that the product is made to be the best that it can be. It's the best that it can be for a price point.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
And I think that's what allowed companies in those sort of strength sectors to go, you know what, we're not a cardio provider, we're a strength provider, and we want to make equipment that works better. So you're right, the product has increased so much, but it's also become a little more commoditized in those mainstream providers. And you hear people say a treadmill's a treadmill, and it's not technically true, but the difference between the quality of a product 20 years ago for those top 5 providers and now is the margin of difference is quite minimal.
Yeah.
What makes product good now can be the raw products, so the quality steel that goes into them, as opposed to being commoditized or buying in bulk. You can get people who buy in smaller batches.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more that goes into the manufacturing of the product if you actually get down at that granular level.
Yeah.
But yes, in general, I think, aesthetics has played a part and people have made equipment look better.
Yep.
Our Italian cousins had sort of made people in the industry want to make equipment look better.
Yeah. Yeah.
The flip side to that is there are other manufacturers who want equipment to work better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I think our industry is evolving in such a great way that there is that mix of both. And if you relate it to the auto industry, there is some big manufacturers who do an okay product that a lot of the mainstream will purchase.
Yeah.
But then there's these, people who make high performance, and then they make, low cost, and there's that whole range of in between. So I'm a bit of an equipment nerd in case you hadn't picked up on that.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it too. If I think about an experience I had, so sort of around about early 2000s, maybe it was late 90s, early 2000s, I was heavily involved in my PT business. I was teaching at FitLink College in Brisbane, and I was growing my PT business, and I've struck up a relationship with back then Elite Fitness Equipment. So you remember the guys from Elite? They had the retail shops,
Yep.
And they were looking to move into the commercial arm. And back then they got me on board to go, hey man, you use all this stuff. Can you come in and assess what we're doing? And back then, I guess what most equipment manufacturers were doing was just copying what anyone else was doing. So they go, let's get this leg extension and can you just build it like that, And what was happening, you jump on a leg extension and it'd have a terrible range of motion, and, it just didn't work properly. And I remember going into this warehouse, and it was like, they're building this thing and they're replicating this, and lat pull downs that have got no range of motion. I felt like stop, you turn off that machine. It's like, all right, we need to engineer this stuff, right? We need to have range of motion adjusters and all. So I guess that's probably where a lot of that early stuff come from back in the day, right? It was just like, hey, we just, this is what it's meant to look like, and build it like that type of thing.
Yeah, look, I often joke that, and it sounds a little racist, but it's not meant to be. But in the Chinese factories, R&D is not research and development; it's rip off and duplicate. But there is a huge amount of that,
sure,
and there's still a huge amount that continues today. But there are some really great innovators in the manufacturing space, and I quite often now refer to the rise of strength, because strength training has become, I think it's the number one hashtag when you look at anything related to fitness. Glutes has become a segment that nobody even thought of 10 years ago.
That's right. It's a whole new part of a gym, right? Which didn't exist before.
Yeah. And we do seem to be very good at ripping off and duplicating the ideas that people have in these spaces, but there are some really true innovators out there, and it's still a really exciting place to be. So it's phenomenal. All right, let's step out of the equipment side for a moment. I want to talk a bit about your experience, because you're quite the interesting experience. So, you started off as a PT. How long did you PT for? Well, I started PT part-time in Canberra. I was in the military, so I was in the infantry. I transferred across to what was called physical training instruction, which ironically was medical corps in the military, and I started doing PT part-time in 2001. So it was kind of just a way to make some extra money while I was studying as well. Didn't have much of a life. I lived in Canberra, so about 2001, I started doing PT, and it was just a sideline project. It was never, ever a full-time thing for me, but I loved it. So yeah, that's cool. And then at some point in your journey, so you started selling equipment in the early 2000s as well? Yeah, so I ended up getting discharged from the Army with a knee injury, and my first sort of mentor, I suppose you'd say, Greg Webb, he owned a company called Bliss Fitness, and he was distributing Cybex equipment. And Cybex, for me, has always been one of the premier equipment brands. Sad demise since Life Fitness bought it out, but we won't focus too much on that. So when I got discharged from the military, I ended up starting working for Greg in sales, and I started selling into the Queensland market. I relocated back from Canberra to Brisbane because of an ex-girlfriend. Again, we probably won't go into too much detail there, but started selling equipment. And I still kept doing personal training on the side of that. Because I've always had an interest in training and developing
had a
people.
passion for it. And
Yeah.
That's cool.
So yeah, it was sort of a sideline thing for me always, but always something I've enjoyed doing. So
yeah, that's great. And at some point in time, you got into and owned not just one but many gyms. So when was the timeline? Or how did you come across owning your first gym? And what did that step look like?
I think a lot of people have happy accidents and always think that the grass is greener. But I was selling equipment and we had funded some equipment into one of my customers. So back then you didn't have what was called the PPSR. You could literally finance something and you could get a right of entry from the landlord and you were able to come back and repossess the goods. Very, very different now, regulations in the finance sector. But the long story short was Kerry had a gym in Lennox Head.
Yeah.
I sort of semi-jokingly said to her, if anything ever goes bad and you ever want to sell up, and I'd love to buy this gym. It feels like a dream.
Yeah.
And about 2 hours later, we had a handshake.
Oh, wow.
She was going through a messy divorce.
Yeah.
Funds were in trouble. And I agreed to take over the gym. And from an outsider as an equipment supplier, you thought, oh, well, just whack some equipment in and
happy days.
This thing's going to go well. I knew nothing about operating a gym. Lost a lot of money initially. And I ended up bringing in a business partner who had managed gyms, and he invested some money into the gym. He became my business partner, and we started growing that club, and we turned it around from losing a lot of money to becoming quite a profitable little entity.
That's awesome. What year was that you took over that?
I think it was about 2005, 2006. I'm not great in timelining things, but it was that
so
early
about 20
2000s.
years ago. And back then there was still a lot of, let's call them independent style gyms.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this would have been one of them.
Yeah, so Lennox Head was a little town, about 6,000 people. We kind of looked at
how many square metres was the gym?
It was an old squash court. So we converted a couple of the squash courts. We kept some of the squash courts.
Yeah.
I don't know, I suppose you'd say it was about 700 square metres.
Okay, so it was decent
roughly.
In size. Yeah.
It was decent. It was a four-court squash court. And, we kind of rearranged different areas, and it wasn't the most aesthetically pleasing club, but it was a great little club. And, it originally was working on paid-in-full memberships. We turned it into a direct debit, sort of database.
Yeah.
We were really, really early in the whole 24-hour swipe card access thing.
Awesome.
We had a finger scanner, which, we thought we were tech geniuses at the time, but it became easier to revert back to cards.
Yeah.
But we built that up to having about 400 direct debit members, which on a facility where, I think our overall operating costs were around 17,500 a month to operate the club. We built it up to about 35K. So it was quite a profitable little club.
Yeah,
and,
awesome. And so back to that, because we'd have a number of people who would tune into our podcast who are going, I'm let's say I'm PTing, or I've got aspirations to own a gym or eventually have my own facility. Really, you went into that arrangement with no money down. Is that right? Was there a purchase fee, if you don't mind me asking?
No, mate, ask away. We paid a small sum for the business up front, and then I put in a heap of equipment.
Yeah. The reason why you did that is because that particular person they wanted out. And so they had the lease, all that sort of stuff. So they were staring down the barrel of going, okay, this thing's not looking great for me. I want out. I want the pain to go away.
Look, from my side, I didn't do a proper valuation on the business. I didn't know anything about EBITDA and multiples, and it was one of those things. I really just leapt blindly into it, and I call it a happy accident because I learnt so much about business and operating a business then, and it cost me a couple of $100,000 of losses in the first sort of 6 months before I went, Jesus, you better wake up to yourself, son. And that's where I started to go, okay, this is no longer what I thought could be a side hustle. I had to get myself heavily involved into turning that club around with my business partner and going, how do we make this thing work? And,
Meanwhile, you were still working, were you, like full-time as like selling equipment?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was like 2 full-time jobs and it was a pretty stressful period. So.
Yeah. What I particularly like about it, and this is, I guess, the message we have for others, is you go look for the opportunity, because out there, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a commercial gym, but there could be a PT studio or whatever, where you don't know what's going on from the outside looking in. You might see it and you might go, okay, there's a place, and there's PT studios everywhere. There's boxing gyms, MMA, all the rest of it. You got no idea if this person's been hanging on for months, just desperate to get out, but they got no idea how they can walk away from it. And for some people, the idea of walking away is much less painful than keep on plugging on, right? And so there could be opportunities where you could go in with no money down and just take over the lease and so forth, and take over the equipment, whatever's owing, all that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot of opportunity out there now for especially people who are getting to, more senior in age, who haven't really set up their business to sell it. There's a lot of, I suppose you would call it mar and par operators who didn't never really have an exit strategy. They might have a great lease that they're in, but they're not really set to sell their business. And I think there can be some opportunity there where you might go in and prove yourself with a vendor stake. You might give them a sum of money to take a management in the business, and that becomes the stepping stone to buying them out over time.
Yeah.
I think that looking for creative ways is a really cool thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you're a club manager or a facility manager or a PT studio manager or a senior PT, there's so many ways in which, people in more senior roles may give you an opportunity to get your first equity in that business.
Yes.
But you got to work for it.
That's right. You got to prove. Yeah, that's right. You got to prove your worth first of all. Yeah. Get in. Do the work, and show your level of preparedness in that. And then the other part is, of course, up your skill set, because you would have learned a lot about business in that time.
The most expensive lessons are obviously the best lessons, and. The beauty, I think, now as we sort of age, is we realise there are great training entities out there like Trainer HQ that can really, pass on what those expensive lessons were for a fraction of the cost to you as a customer.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing is the access to education and upskilling is there now. And
yeah, 100%.
I would recommend any new trainer or, younger trainer who has aspirations of creating a career, upgrade your skills in the business part of it. Being a great PT doesn't mean you're a great business owner.
Amen. Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's that thing, hey, in business, you're in business, and you need to understand the concept of business. And because if you don't, then there's a good chance you're going to struggle. And that's for anyone, even if you're a rent-based trainer in a gym, online coach, whatever it might be. So
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think part of that I talk about right at the start about Fit into Shape is I love working with young trainers, because you want to help them progress along their career, and you want to see them have actually a career, not just think that this is a sideline project.
Yeah.
Because there is a real career path line that people can follow in our industry.
100%.
And so many different path lines, and that can be from an equipment salesperson or a service tech to, the flip side of it being a personal trainer or a gym manager or working in the creation, developing your way out. There's so many different avenues that people don't necessarily see the career path. For those of us who do hang around in the industry, we etch our way through one.
That's right. And what you mentioned before about the idea of getting help, getting a coach, getting upskilling in business. Yeah, I agree. I say the same thing to people who are onboarding through Trainer HQ now. Up to 200 clients every year join our higher level coaching programs. Thousands other come to workshops and seminars, download resources. Tune into our other stuff. But for many people who work with us and join our coaching program, they're quite often what we attract is someone who's intrinsically driven. They're motivated. They're already having a go and they want to go to the next level. But the other part is, could these people figure it out on their own? They probably could, right? However, it's going to take them a lot of trial and error and a lot of time, right? So, 3, 5, 7 years, and a bit like you were alluding to, it's like you learnt the hard way, And it's like we go, well, why wait 5 to 7 years when we can do that in 12 months? You know,
School of Hard Knocks is a pretty expensive way to learn. So
yeah, and again, that's the cost of inaction, because someone goes, oh well, I'm a bit hesitant at, let's say, investing and getting help right from the outset. You go, well, what's the cost of not acting? And it can be a multiple of 10 on top of that. You know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, I think a lot of people don't see the value in it until they're battling away, and then they're like, it's almost like the pressure becomes too much that they finally reach out. The smart ones do it early.
Yes, and again we see this, and for the almost 20 years we've run this program and onboarded now thousands of clients. We do have that happening too. It's when someone gets at the water cliff's edge, and when they're, you know, everything's going to shit, it's when they finally reach out and go, fuck, I need help, right? And we look at it, we come and go, why didn't you reach out 12 months ago? You know, I thought I'd come good. I thought I'd make it happen, you know. And I had an experience with a guy just this morning, a conversation with him. I had a chat with him a couple of days ago about onboarding into our program. He was a strong candidate. He'd kicked off as a PT and he'd had a big dip, and he was disillusioned, and he was kind of like, all right, I need help, you know, singing out. Once we crunched the numbers and all that, he went back to his wife. He's got 2 young kids, all that sort of stuff. The conversation we had this morning is that he was fucking flat as a shit carter's hat when I spoke to him at 5:30 this morning. And, you know, and he relayed to me, he goes, yeah, I didn't realize how bad of a situation we're actually in financially, you know. and this prompted him to like, if they were just getting by, and then they've realized it's really shined a spotlight on it, you know. So, but yeah, that's an example of someone who's in that spot. So, you know, he's no good to start with us right now, but what he is good for is I've been able to supply him with some suggestions and some resources and things. Like, he was off today. He goes, mate, I got to go and get a job, pour beers at a pub, fucking work at Bunnings, do whatever I can to bring some money in. I want my fitness business to be a success, but in the short term, geez, we're going behind. We're not going to be able to pay the rent, you know, all that sort of stuff in the short term. So it does happen, and we see it. We've you know, me and you both been in the game for a very long time, and we've seen those that have made a success of it. But unfortunately, we've seen a lot of people who have had their dreams, their aspirations. You've probably seen people who have set up facilities and spent money and capital and have that dream not get fulfilled, right? Because they didn't have the business knowledge and education and systems to back it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the stats I quite often refer to, and again, I'm not great at what is it, 87% of all statistics are made up on the spot. Maybe it's 76, but high level, Switzerland, to open a new bank, a new business over there, you have to have, I think it's 12 months of education in business learnings and stuff like that. So they open a lot less businesses.
Yeah, wow.
But their failure rate, I think, is something like 17 or 18% in the first 12 months. The flip side here is anyone can open a business. You simply or literally go to the ABN, you get a number, and you're off and racing. And there's no education required.
Yep.
And I believe it's something like 80% of businesses in Australia fail in the first year because there is no mandatory education. The barrier to entry is so low. I would love to see that there is some form of education, even at a general level, that people have to be given on just the basics of a P&L.
Yeah. What
the difference between a P&L and a balance sheet is. There's so many of these basic parameters that nobody knows about. Simple things like setting up a GST bank account.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it's
that
not
is
your
not
money.
your money. Yeah.
It's not your money. But I can guarantee for myself, I've got myself in tax trouble over the years because you just didn't have that education to begin with. And I'm a big advocate of education and reaching out to support and having the right education partners, or, you know, I mean, Trainer HQ is a great example of that, but I call you an education partner because you are educating people on business, on marketing, on how to be better business operators. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's so true. Now let's go back. We're back at one gym, but you didn't stop at one, so it grew. How many did you get to?
Well, we thought we were great entrepreneurs at the time, and if one business works, why won't two? And then if two work, why won't 3 and 4? So we grew to 4. We didn't have any processes in place. We muscled our way through with our learnings, and we got to 4 clubs, and things were going okay. But, you know, in a business, they all have a different life as well. You know, when you're building up and building through those initial phases and you get your direct debit up and you hit your break even and get into your cream. That's the life in one business, but the next one can then be funded from doing that, and the next one can be funded.
Gotcha.
And, so we grew to 4, but we grew it without processes, and we were just running around like dog ass flies. We were in the car every week. If somebody couldn't fill something, you're running around to the 4 clubs, and we didn't have processes in place. And we were looking at acquiring our 5th club, and I came across a lady called Kylie Cordy, who she had her business. It was called Our Factor. It was a smaller gym in Ormo. Trading figures were great. When we looked at it, we went, well, this business is out of our reach to buy. But, we kind of got into the breakdown of what she was doing. And she had a fully systemized business and operational procedures. And I went, we can't afford to buy a business, but how can we work together? So that's where we ended up kind of joining forces.
Yeah.
We then put in the franchise systems that she had, and we had a business partner, Simone Pentis, who was the franchise lawyer for the coffee club at the time. So my business partner, Marcus, and I held a 45% stake. They held a 45% stake, and Simone had a 10% stake. I think that was the way it went. And we started a franchise business. I think it was around 2008. Hated franchising, didn't ever want to get into franchising, but somehow because of where we'd gotten to, it seemed like having a franchise was the way to go.
Yeah.
So we had the 4 clubs ourselves. We bought on a 5th club ourselves, and then we started to bring franchisees into the business. I ended up not loving the franchise part of the business, and as things were going along concurrently, the equipment side of the business was growing, and I really had to make a decision. Did I want to be in operations and in club operations, or did I want to stay with equipment sales? So I ended up exiting out of that business, but keeping on one of the clubs myself as a franchisor.
Yep.
Or sorry, a franchisee.
And so it became yours. And
Exit had been the franchisor. So, and then I ended up opening some other brands under a different brand later on. So I guess I've always dabbled in this owning gyms and the alike. Always enjoyed, having clubs. I ended up having 3 Pilates studios as well. So I played in the boutique space.
Fantastic.
But have exited all other businesses outside of Fit Into Shape to remain very heavily focused now on what we do.
Yeah.
But certainly a lot of experience there. Had 12 clubs and 3 studios at various points over the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I love hearing the story and what you were saying about the 4 clubs and then not having any systems or process or limited, and it just create this monster that needs feeding, and it sounds like it was, you were just doing whatever you could, putting out fires, all the rest of it. And then when you started to systematize, it was like, okay, sweet, I can see where this thing's going and how we can more streamline this whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I, again, would heavily recommend that, whatever the processes are in a business, and even if you're starting as a PT, as a single operator, start document the things that you do. The beauty now of AI is documenting processes that used to take months and months to, Word document and type things up and edit them and format them. And it can be done in hours now. It's a lot more simple to document systems. But I think, probably the biggest piece of advice I'd give to anyone starting out in business is start to document your processes early on and become at least systematic so that what's in your head is easier to transfer that information to other people.
Great advice. Such solid advice, and on so many levels. And the other part, and for a lot of people who are in either a startup phase or a growth phase, and especially this is the conversation we have with them when we're onboarding clients to work with us at Trainer HQ, there's sort of these 2 things that are happening simultaneously together. Like for most people, it's you want to have an increase in income, revenue, profitability. So we want to put some more bums on seats, want to get some more money in the door. You want to get evidence that this thing's working and so forth. But at the same time, if you go out there and hustle and grind and go for it, but if we don't improve the systems and processes, again, we just create a mess. And so, so we want to make sure those two happen together. On the flip side, we could work together with somebody for 6 or 12 months and build these beautiful functioning systems. The things runs like a machine, but we don't onboard any more clients. You're not in much a better position financially, right? Probably worse. So it's like that's why those two things need to go hand in hand for most businesses.
Look, absolutely. I think that they are things that run concurrently, but it also comes down to personality traits. And without getting too much into it, I'm not like an expert in personality traits, but if you look at disc profiling, you got a high D or a high I sort of personality. They're, your direct personalities or your I styles, like your group fitness instructors are, they love to be
bubbly
in front
and
of people.
Gregarious and
yeah. But they're not particularly good at documenting anything.
No.
They want to go out and be the life of it or cut to the chase. You've got the flip side of your S&C personalities who are more likely to want to document and do things. So what I'd say is if you sit in that I or D personality and that's not your strength, is find someone to work with who will back you up. Doesn't have to be a business partnership. It doesn't have to be a business partner, but find someone who'll back you up who's that opposing style to you. And I think, like attracts like. So quite often, your D and your I personalities don't interact with your S and your C personalities and they kind of oppose one another. But if you can figure out how to work with opposing personalities, that's where I think the two concurrently can run together. So
it's great advice. Myself, it reminds me to when myself and Jace launched Trainer HQ, the early days of it, the inception back in sort of 2007, us launching the first workshop in 2008. Back then we both were running our own businesses independently. We had some great revenue coming in from those businesses. We're in a strong financial position. But when we started this, we said we're going to start this with no cash injection, no money down, and we don't need it, and we're going to build and it onboard the first team member. And so at the start, we were like, who do we need first? Well, we were processing payments and doing all this sort of shit, and we're like, fuck, that's the first thing. We need admin support because this is not our wheelhouse, not our strength. And it was like we set our first target, get our first ex-clients on board, and the first hire we're going to make is an admin person. And it was like that's a great example of it. So it's like get the right person in who loves that and is passionate about it. And right now, Lynn, who's our office manager, she's been in the role for 15 years in that spot. So it's when you do find the right person, you find that synergy and that that person that works with you with their unique skill set. Something they do it 100 times better than us. We're like, you want to answer to that XYZ question? Lynn is your person. You don't ask us.
No, look, again, I think a lot of people, I've heard a lot of business coaches over the years sort of say, focus on your weaknesses and make them your strengths. I think that's absolute BS. Focus on your strengths and make them stronger because your weaknesses are probably going to always tend to be your weakness. Find other people who can cater for those weaknesses. I think you've got a far stronger operation across the board.
Love it, man. All right, so great knowledge, great insights. Now, whilst all this was happening, so when did you actually sell your last gym? Like when did that all happen?
Around 2023. So
not long ago, a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago. Independent club. It was out at Jimboomba, Fitness Matters. It still has the name Fitness Matters, so that name still exists. It's no longer a franchise, but the name still exists. We exited the business. I'd been in it for 2008, 15 years. Roughly. Wow. It was a great little business. It had traded well, done its thing, and divorce has a funny way of resettling where your life goes. So that was the main reason for exit from that business. I was actually in it. We've just recently sold some equipment to it, so it was quite funny being back installing and working with the new owners and the club manager in there now and seeing where the business was and where it's at. And it's retained much of its personality and character, but like all new owners come in and put their stamp on it, and it's been sold twice since I exited it.
Wow. Okay. Now, through all this journey, like obviously in your experience in the industry, plus all the selling of equipment, you would have met so many gym operators and so forth. You obviously seen some successful operations. You've probably seen some people who aren't doing it so great. What are some of the traits that you've seen of those that are doing a good job?
I think, some people want to focus on the brand on a building, and the brand on the building can be important. But the reality is, I think it starts with site selection. If you have a poor site, it doesn't matter what brand, whether you're an independent or a franchise if it's a poor site, you are going to struggle.
Okay.
Now, in poor site, that includes two things. I think poor site is locality, but it's also a poor lease. If your lease is too high or your rent's too high or it gears up with CPI or, it starts off okay, but you've got this massive gearing up, or you've got an amortized part of your lease where the fit out gets amortized, but your rent becomes too high. Those things contribute to what I call a poor location. And it really doesn't matter what the brand is on the door. I would say to anybody is really try and focus on a good lease, because having fights with the landlords, having bad other tenancies that cause problems for you, before you go in there, that's probably the first thing. I think in terms of operators, though, the ones who seem to do well are the ones that have that backup and support. And by backup and support, if they're not paying for backup and support, it's because they've focused on their own, development over the years, their personal development and the like. I think, a side of that is having a backup of cash is important in a business, because projections don't pay bills, just like ego doesn't pay bills.
Yes.
It's great to have your projections, but you need to have that backup and reserve there if things don't go the way that you think they're going to go, because quite often the way you think it's going to go and the way it goes can be very, very different.
Such powerful advice, and this is for anyone tuning into this. If you're sitting there and you're going, I've got aspirations to open my own PT studio or gym or whatever it might be, that right there is just gold. And it's really knowing the market is the thing I heard about that. So because for some people, they go, well, how do I know if it's a good lease, the pricing, all that sort of stuff? And you really do need to get yourself skilled, educated, do your research, or get around people that have got the knowledge. So that's the other thing I'm hearing, fit into shape. You just don't help people with, hey, mate, put this bit of equipment in here. You got the ability to consult and to understand what is a good deal for somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, my big thing is, and I said earlier on about, the cliche of partnership, but for us, I don't want to just sell equipment to somebody once. That to me is not a partnership. That's a transaction. And there are plenty of companies who will just sell you equipment. They may even back it up with service, but the reality is your basic sales rep's job is to sell as much equipment as they can so that they can make their commissions and get paid and keep their job. For us and for my small team, I've got, it's a little bit of a running joke, but nobody in the organisation, with the exception of myself, is under 50 years of age. We've got great experience on our team. And that experience I want to lend to is not just their equipment selection, but it is everything to do with, have you got the right lease, and it doesn't mean we're going to stick our nose into everyone's business.
Sure.
If you've got experienced operators, cool.
Yeah, but that's right.
But I want to see people succeed, and we will do everything we can to help them. And, simple things like we talked earlier about just jamming equipment in. Some of the general examples I might give is asking somebody, they'll say, I want 10 treadmills and I want this and I want that. And I'll ask, well, how many members do you think you're going to grow to? And they'll give me their top line projection. And I'll say, how many are you going to open with? And they'll say a much lower figure and they're going to build up. And I'll say, so why is it you think you need this much equipment to open with? And it starts to get them thinking. And sometimes I'll hear, it's because I want to wow people. I want to give them everything from the beginning. I'm like, that's great. But what about when you don't hit that initial target and you've got your members? How do you retain your members? Because member retention is such an important aspect of gym ownership that so many people kind of forget about.
Yeah.
Retaining the members when the next club opens and the next shiny toy's over there. A lot of members do want to stray off to there. So how do you retain them? And a big part of that is having a phase strategy of what your equipment selection might look like over the first 12 to 18 months. When you hit a particular number, then you're going to add some extra things, because that helps to retain your existing members. It adds excitement. And if you market that well, then that huge investment that you're making in equipment is something that you put out as a marketing piece. You might survey your members and ask them the pieces that they want, but you already have a plan in place. But if the members are surveyed, they feel that they've had a part of that.
Yeah.
So
good.
there's a lot of things that I like to work with, and it's not just, well, how can we get the most out of you up front? It's what is your strategy for success, and what does it look like over the next 18 to, well, the next 10 years.
Well, that's the thing. Hey, well, the strength you bring to it is your experience of being in the game for so long, owning gyms, knowing the numbers, right? So back to the lease side of it, I think of the analogy when we bought our first property, myself and HP, our goal in buying our first house was we wanted to find somewhere that we could get in and do some cosmetic renovation on so we could add some value to it. So it was like, all right, we didn't just want to buy a house and just, all right, that was it, 25, 30 years, pay it off. It was like, no, let's get in and let's find something we could pretty up. To get to that point, I didn't have much knowledge on property at the time, but of course did the research, followed the experts, got good people around me, nailed down the 2 suburbs in Brisbane that for us were we saw the most upswing, and then went to work. So we entered not just online, but entered and inspected over 120 houses, gave offers on all the rest of it. And when we bought the one we bought, the reason we bought it is that we walked in and we went, fuck, this asking price. We were prepared to pay the asking price. It was like, and we knew because we'd done the research, and that knowledge is just priceless. So back to the lease side of it, it's like when you've got that knowledge and you've got someone with experience that can show you, look at something and go, man, this is not geared towards your favor. That's going to save people a lot of time, a lot of heartache down the track.
Yeah, I think do the work is key. It's also knowing what you want to achieve. So a higher rate in a lease may be achievable if you're in the right demographic or if your business model is going to work. So the lease has to be suitable to what you're trying to operate the business at.
Absolutely.
And a high value, low membership yield value might not be achievable in a particular lease at that rate. That said, it might be. You have to do the analytics on it and go, well, what is our business? What is our business model? And how are we going to plan on our recurring revenues?
Yeah, and the other point you make is many people will do their projections based on the number that they would love to achieve. Yep, love to achieve X, but it's like, all right, what's my worst case scenario here that I think is my non-negotiable minimum target, The other thing I heard you say about having cash reserves, it's when we teach at Trent HQ, it's like you want to set up all your bank account structure. You mentioned before about GST. It's like we need to farm off the GST, you need to farm off the tax, you need to pay yourself a wage, you need to have a profit account. Plus we need to have what we refer to as the vault account, right? What's the purpose of a vault account? Well, it's fucking crack open only in case of an emergency, and it's like there's for most businesses we work with, they've got 6, 7 or so accounts. And for a lot of people, when we start with them, how many business bank accounts you got? Well, 1, and then what do you do with, well, I still pay the groceries, and no, we need to restructure this, right? So, yeah.
No, it's vital. And that education is what people need to come to get. And, we go right back to where I was talking about, opening a business. Just because it's not formalized that we have to have a level of education, the advice I'd give to anyone looking to do a business is not just work in the industry and think then that you're qualified to open that business. Start to do the work while you're developing, and that work might be on personal or professional development. It's getting in and understanding that, just because you're a gym manager doesn't mean you're an owner. Find out what an owner goes through. If you think that you want to own the business, start to get mentored by the owner of the business of what they've done. So many business owners want to have a mentee.
Someone they can guide and teach and share their knowledge with.
Yeah, and again, you talked about different paths to ownership. Asking, the owner of the business to mentor you, could be a path to opening that conversation, because a lot of owners might go, okay, well, I am looking at doing less, and this person's hungry and they want to develop, and they're asking me to develop them. You start to build a really strong relationship. If you then look to want to sell the business, looking within from somebody who you've mentored is going to be a great path. From the flip side, that person who's the mentee has learnt so many of the traits of what the business is. They've seen insights that they wouldn't normally get as a manager, and then potentially, they go in more fully armed, and the chances of success are greater. So it's a lot of benefits in it.
Awesome, man. So good, so good. Now, let's for people who are thinking about this, really where your speciality comes in is, let's say I'm thinking about going into a studio, a gym, whatever it might be, you'd be the first point of call. And then from there, it's really everything from start to finish, isn't it? It's really figuring out what's the space look like. Lease, there's all that part, but then the equipment side of it is where you specialize and where you really shine in that point of view.
Yeah, look, we like to ensure that we're going to give a great layout to people. Things from power. A lot of people don't think about their power requirements. It's not just their current power requirements, but what their future requirements are. If they want to get to that 10 treadmills when they start at 6, well, you still want to put the 10 power points in to cater for that future growth.
And then there'll be a projection on power bills as a result of that.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's also, that space planning that goes around that. You might then go, okay, well, if we've got these 10 power points, well, what does it look like now? What's it going to look like when we expand to that? Critical things like where's the sun come throughout the day. A lot of people don't think about, well, the sun raises here, it goes over there. What's the looks on the, what do they call it, the sunlight coming in? How that going to impact the longevity of the equipment, or when members are looking out, are they looking into the sun?
Yes.
So are you going to put blinds in?
Yeah.
Lots of little things like that. Flooring. Flooring is such an overlooked part of the gyms where people just go, we'll just keep carpet, or we'll throw in some flooring, or it's often a last thought of thing. Well, flooring is one of the key parts of it. As a friend of mine recently said, flooring's not boring. But there's just so many facets to it. Are you running group fitness? If you are, how's the noise going to come? If you're over a concrete slab, what's the noise going to be that reverberates up and down? So there's so many aspects to actually making sure that the gym is going to work that people don't always take these things into consideration.
Oh, it's a thing. Hey, for most people, they'll go into it somewhat blindly, but just with grand expectations and go, oh, this thing's going to be great. Can't wait to open the doors, put my brand on the door, all that sort of stuff. But it's all these little things which are so critical. It's the 1%ers, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a lot of 1%ers. You know, I mean, just simple things like having glutes is such a trend in our industry, but most of our female members who are focused on the glutes don't want to be doing abduction or adduction in front of a mirror or in front of other members. They want an element of privacy. Yeah, there are all of these aspects that you need to look at when you're doing your gym design, so that you're going to have a layout that people feel comfortable in, that they feel welcome, that they're not intimidated. It's not just simply throwing the equipment on the floor and hoping for the best. Or if you create a zone, well, what are you putting in that zone? How does it work with the other zones that are around it? So there's just a lot that does go into it if you're doing it right.
Yeah, so good. So how can people find you or reach out? Is it Instagram, or is it more website? Where's the best place for them to start?
Look, I do a reasonable amount of marketing. I do have a podcast as well. My italics, and I'm putting my fingers up doing the air quotes, is Gym Design Chaos. So if there's any sort of initial interest, look me up on Instagram. I would ordinarily say go to LinkedIn, but I've been banned from LinkedIn, and I'm trying to turn that over, and I'm not quite sure.
Damn. I've never heard of anyone getting banned from LinkedIn. Jesus.
Yeah. So I'm hoping, by the time this airs, maybe I'm back on LinkedIn and have my account back. But as a nearly 50-year-old, to say I'm on TikTok as well.
So YouTube, what's the Insta handle at?
Gym Design Chaos.
Gym Design, Gym Design Chaos.
Just search Glen Taylor; he'll come up. Obviously, we also have our Fit Into Shape business account.
Fit in shape.
Yeah, Fit Into Shape.
Into shape. Yeah.
And
I read some, and also it's the YouTube is Tailor Made Chaos, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So
it's the podcast, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's the YouTube channel, and the podcast goes on there. Look, go to our website, www or http fitintoshape.com.au. There's links on the website as well. So
yeah, wonderful.
People will find me.
Love it, man. Love it. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. There's been, you've had such a great experience in the industry and what you've done, and I guess that whole journey, owning gyms, equipment, all that part, and now, this next stage for you in terms of this next level of growth. So super pumped for you. Great to be affiliated with you, and great for us to be in partnership and collaborating and working together. So, mate, thanks for joining us, and mate, looking forward to us powering along together, mate.
Trainer HQ times FIS, a powerful partnership. Sounds very good.
Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Glen Taylor.
Thank you.